What's going on, everybody? I'm Sam from Flywheel, and I'm joined here with my co-host, DeFi Dave.
Hello.
And we also have the incredible Cryptovestor also here.
How you doing, guys?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing great.
Good.
Very excited.
Very excited.
And we're all very excited because the launch of Fraxtal, aka Fraxchain, is coming up in just a few days. And so what we're going to do on this episode today is just talk about 10 things that we know about Fraxchain, aka Fraxtal. Fractal? Is it Fraxtal or Fractal?
It's Fraxtal.
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 Can we just call it Fractal but spell it with an X?
I think it's Fraxtal.
Okay. So we're going to go through everything that Sam said over the past several months about Fraxchain. And then we're going to also blend in some of the alpha that Cryptovestor has been pulling out and putting into his alpha corner that we published here on Flywheel. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, share this, repost to all your friends and family. Get the word out about Fraxtal.
Support us.
And, we're doing this for you so you can get the hottest Frax alpha.
We love you. That's why we do it.
Okay, so let's dive in. So the first thing that we know about Fraxtal is that it's going to launch in just a couple of days. We're literally, I don't know, less than 2 weeks out. Could be less. Sam has been posting.
Maybe we should check the chain, see how it's doing.
Exactly.
See. I don't know.
Sam has been posting 7 in the chat, so I don't know if that means anything.
I keep seeing a lot of 7s. So
I keep seeing a lot of 7s.
Yeah. I think it's February 7th, but we'll see.
Well, if it is February 7th, today is Tuesday the 30th, and that would mean that it's a week from tomorrow, which is not a lot of time.
No.
So that's the first thing that we know. Okay, let's go into the second thing. That is that Fraxtal is going to be a general purpose chain with scaling on top. So Sam K described Fraxtal as a general purpose blockchain, similar to other layer two solutions like Arbitrum or Polygon. And he likened the scope of Fraxtal to that of a established rollup solution, Arbitrum, Optimism, ZK Sync. But it's not just another like app chain or like just another rollup, right? He called it a comprehensive technology stack with a broader ambition than other rollups currently launching just app chains.
It's exciting.
Yeah. It's definitely not your garden variety chain. This is not your Arbitrum. This is not your general. I do find it interesting that they're using the OP stack. So that means, and what I'm reading into that is it's going to have an immediate compatibility with Base. And I think that's intentional. I think that's, they want to get like probably USDC and, a lot of the Coinbase users to be able to move back and forth using that Optimism stack. That's probably why they started with that. Just my speculation. I don't know for sure, but I mean, I can see a connection to Coinbase there.
Yeah.
So the network effects do help.
Yeah. And Frax, was there any governance proposals for Base? I thought there was like a Frax ferry to Base, but we haven't really
There was a Frax ferry to Base. I think it got approved, but I'm not sure if it ever got implemented.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't
think
so.
Maybe with Fraxchain, we get a new way to get over to Base.
Yeah.
And so the second thing, actually, you touched on it, Cryptovestor, is that Fraxtal is going to be using a modified OP stack, and then it's going to have Superchain compatibility as well, too.
Okay, so let's get that. What is the Superchain compatibility?
Yeah.
Okay, so a Superchain is a L2 or even in an L1 blockchain capable of connecting or interacting with multiple other blockchains, often to leverage their unique features or to enhance interoperability. And so Sam said that this is essentially going to allow it to be interoperable, where many other chains are going to push their root hashes and point their DA to Fraxtal.
Yeah, that's pretty unique, guys. Like, I don't know any other ETH L2 that does anything close to that. Nothing. Yeah. Like,
you guys. Go ahead. I was going to ask. Yeah, go ahead.
When I hear that, I can't. I'm envisioning, something like Optimism or Arbitrum, but with the ability to connect natively with all types of L1s like Solana. And I brought that up in the chat because I was curious. I was like, when he said commit to, state, that any chain could commit to Fraxtal, and I'm thinking, what the heck does that mean? And I'm just, it sparked, and I was like, wait a minute, you telling me that you could connect this to like Solana natively? And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, what? And so, no, I think that's just, there's not many chains out there. The closest thing is probably Celestia. And the difference there, I think, is that it's not an ETH L2. So because Fraxtal is going to be an ETH L2, it's going to have access to all of the ETH liquidity, which is then going to be able to be easily moved to things like Solana, Celestia, and other, super chains. So I really, honestly, I don't even know how to describe this because there's nothing like it out there, really. That is an ETH L2. And the way they're going to be able to connect things without bridges, I did ask him another question about the bridges, and he said, yeah, it would be able to connect natively.
Yeah, that's the key, without bridges, being able to have native Frax issuance on all these chains. And when he says, it's funny when he says, like, other chains can commit their root hashes, I'm like, oh, this is like the blockchain's blockchain.
Kind of, yeah. And then I asked the question if, will you be able to issue Frax stablecoin on these other chains natively? And he's like, yeah. And that is just, forget about bridges, forget about Frax Ferry. This is going to be able to be, instant moving around using something like imagine Arbitrum that can connect to Solana.
That'd be pretty cool.
That's kind of what Fraxtal is. And that's just insane.
It reminds me of where all of the like collateral assets are held on ETH L1 for security, but then the L2 becomes the liquidity hub that's able to plug into everything else because of Ethereum's like monolithic structure. And so with this new modular rollup system that they're rolling out for Fraxtal, they can, the way that you guys were talking about it kind of reminds me of like the Cosmos Hub.
Sort of.
Not that like they're providing security for everything else, but that all these other networks can bridge into like one central place to move liquidity around. And with Frax, it's always about liquidity. So
right,
yeah.
And so ETH now becomes the security layer for Fraxtal, right? So you're using that underlying security of ETH. Then they used FrxETH as the gas token. So as more usage of the chain, as the chain gets used or utilized, you're securing ETH even further by using the gas token, which is staked ETH, right? As more staked ETH is on the chain itself, it raises the APY of staked FrxETH on ETH mainnet. So now the APY, now there's a lot more minting of FrxETH on chain, right? To be able to be deposited on Fraxtal. So you have this sort of, it's the weirdest thing, but it's like a flywheel within the chain. I mean, I know it's really pun, like, it's kind of like, why, we're a flywheel podcast, but that's what it's starting to look like. And then to add to that, you have a situation where the Fraxtal points and this potential airdrop that looks like it's going to be coming is going to be accruing points so that you can get locked veFXS, right?
Well, you're getting ahead of ourselves. So
all right, I'll get you go down your list so that we can.
Okay, so that was number 2. Number 2 is modified OP stack and Superchain compatibility. Number 3 is Sam said on the long-term roadmap, he wants Fraxtal to become a base layer zkL1, where various types, just talked about this, where various types of chains can commit state. Frax would serve as the execution environment for the ecosystem and dApp, similar to Celestia's thin layer 1, but focusing on root hash states and DA pointers. So I think he gave a couple of examples how like Convex could move their governance system into Fraxtal, right?
That would be huge too.
Yeah. Same thing for Curve. Curve could move a lot of its operations onto Fraxtal as well too.
That's another thing we know, right? We know that Curve is going to be launching on Fraxtal. That's obviously part of the infrastructure for Frax. So we know that that's almost needed, but very impressive move there.
Yeah. Another thing, so number 4 that he mentioned just kind of in passing, but hasn't really talked about it further, is that I think they're building out their own DA solution. So I think he was asked several times, like, are you guys using Celestia? He kind of said, yeah, sure. I mean, it's modular. We can use Celestia. But then he said, we're working on something ourselves.
I think he has said Fraxtal DA before.
Yeah.
I've seen that word, that text before. So, I would not be surprised if they're cooking up their own DA layer that suits the needs of a protocol and ecosystem like Frax.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I'm at a loss for words because that's just, I can't even believe they're building something like this. It's amazing.
Yeah. And with being able to operate in the OP stack with Polygon CDK, with Arbitrum, Cosmos, Solana, pretty much everything. And then also being able to offer this DA solution, plus the fractal, I guess, ZK layer 1 L1 at some point. That'd be pretty incredible. I think that it's uncharted territory that we're getting into.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever seen an L1 kind of spawn off like that from an ETH L2. Like that would definitely be interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about number 5. So that's that there's going to be like gas token flexibility, right?
Yep.
So it's going to accept both FrxETH, and then Sam also said that Frax at some point is going to be available too. And so this kind of ties in with the whole stablecoin maximalism thesis that, you have your kind of base assets, which is like Frax and FrxETH, and the more that they're in use, the more yield can go to the people who actually stake it inside of sFrax or in sFrxETH. So by getting people to use those on Fraxtal, it just means that more yield can be directed out to people in those staking facilities.
Yeah, it increases the supply of Frax because you have more usage on Fraxtal.
Yeah, because I think the argument for stake FrxETH was that, like, okay, so you really only have like 2 things right now. FrxETH is being used inside of Curve as liquidity, and then you can also stake it as well too. But as like FrxETH gets bigger and bigger, the amount of Curve incentives that can be distributed gets smaller. Mm-hmm. And so you just get more aggregation in stake FrxETH. And so we've seen that stake FrxETH has kind of like maintained its dominance as we've grown. And now with Fraxtal, we have a brand new system to take FrxETH away from liquidity, take it away from stake FrxETH and put it onto Fraxtal, which will benefit stake FrxETH holders as a whole. Because that FrxETH that's on Fraxtal and being used to pay for gas won't be actually staked. And so the rewards don't go to that. But the people that do use their FrxETH for gas are going to be getting Blockspace incentives.
Do we know if there's any amount of FrxETH that gets burned whenever a transaction is made, similar to what happens on ETH mainnet? Or is that like, the inception of like...
That's a good question.
I just thought about it. I was wondering, is anything happening with the FrxETH? I mean, it's one I'm going to have to throw at Sam to see.
Yeah. And so that gets into number 6, which is the Blockspace incentives. Now, I looked for a lot of information. I looked through all the Telegram for this to see like if Sam had given more information about Blockspace incentives, but we don't have a ton of information yet. Apparently, like when if you deploy a contract that gets a lot of usage, or if you're spending a lot of gas, you're going to get rebates in the form of veFXS.
Yeah, and another question about that is, now that we have this whole new DA layer thing, does that mean that use of the data layer, also that block space will allow other chains to receive these incentives too?
I've just not thought of that yet.
Is that like mind blowing? Like if that happens, then you're talking about a huge amount of veFXS that's getting locked perpetually, right? And if I'm right about the whole convex thing and it gets perpetually locked and forever locked into convex as it's being claimed, then you have a governance token that is shrinking in supply constantly, pushing upward pressure on its price, right? I know this is not a whole, we're not really necessarily discussing price here, but if you're looking at all these flywheel mechanics, it's just it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So
there's been so Canto had some form of like quote unquote Blockspace incentives that they used, and I don't think that Fraxtal is going to be like Canto. It'll probably have to do with the amount of gas burned, and probably the users who spend gas as well too will get gas rebates. But again, this is all conjecture. We're just kind of like going off the top of the head here. But the Blockspace incentives could be pretty big. I mean, that's essentially like permanent incentives to use Fraxtal.
Right. Like, why wouldn't you, as a project, not want to come to a chain that can not only gives you incentives, but also is faster, cheaper, and connects to super chains like Solana? I mean, it's the end state for chains in general. I mean,
it's like Frax, the final stablecoin, Fraxtal, the final chain.
Yeah, I think they did that. They managed to create something like that. I mean, I'm trying to think of a reason why a project wouldn't want to, start or deploy on Fraxtal, and I can't think of one. It's almost like the chain is always giving an airdrop instead of an initial airdrop like some of these other guys do. The Fraxtal chain is just
permanent airdrop. Blockspace incentives? You mean permanent airdrop?
Yeah. I mean, it's basically what the point system is accruing, right? I mean,
well, this is what the people had as a knock on Optimism for their retro public good funding grants, is that the people who were using OP the most and generating the most amount of or using the most amount of block space got almost the smallest amount of grants. And so with Fraxtal, it kind of gets flipped. Like if you're the biggest app on Fraxtal, like if you're a GMX style perp exchange, or if you're somebody else that's just, generate huge amounts of use for the block space, there's going to be massive incentives that will be continuous for that. And so like the revenues that come from your protocol won't just be from people actually paying fees for it. You also get paid by the Fraxtal itself to deploy, and so that could be a massive source of extra revenue for these protocols.
Right, and that revenue can be used for other type of incentives, voting incentives, for whatever the project needs. So it makes sense financially to do something to deploy on Fraxtal.
Yeah. Okay, so that was number 6. On to number 7. We have split governance and gas. So on Fraxtal, you'll pay gas in FrxETH or Frax, and then all of the governance will be handled by veFXS.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a big deal. Separating the two is important. You have the gas tokens, and then you have the locked. It incentivizes FXS to be locked, and it also creates a situation where it incentivizes voting and what's the term I'm trying to look for, governance, in general. So yeah, I think separating the two is probably a smart move.
Yeah. All right. So that was on to number 7. We have that there's going to be an airdrop for veFXS. So this has been teased multiple times. I think the first airdrop will be for Fraxtal points, and then at veFX stakers will probably get lots of airdrops from all the protocols that are deploying on Fraxtal as well too.
That's another thing that's a very, very good point. That's not something everybody's thinking about, but all of these other chains are probably going to be dropping to veFXS holders. Yeah.
It's in the same way people are, hyping up TIA, and it's like, oh, you stake, you get all these airdrops. Well, like this FXS is, has a little something going for it. Just imagine not just like what Frax is doing, but like you said, what, all these new projects that want to deploy onto Fraxtal, like what they can do. Airdropping to veFXS holders. And it's, TIA has just launched a few months ago. Like FXS has been around. You have a loyal community here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that probably, the airdrops probably tie into number 8, which Cryptovestor, you gave me this one, which is special FXS gauges.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you can kind of explain that a little bit.
Well, I'm not, Sam's not been hasn't said a lot about it, but it seems like there's FXS gauges built into the chain.
Yeah.
And so
Yep.
I'm trying to envision like, okay, so locked FXS can direct emissions to certain facets of the chain to incentivize certain actions. I'm not really sure exactly how that's going to work, but it definitely goes along with the ethos of Frax and the way they do incentives and incentive structures. So the fact that they've got gauges built into the chain, which is probably why they built their whole data DA layer, right? I mean, it's all part of this highly incentivized chain. And yeah, I think the FXS gauges are part of that. I don't know where they're going to be directed to. Are they going to be directed for incentives for certain type of usage? Are they going to be part of BAMM? It could be. I don't know. I mean, maybe BAMM has its own FXS gauges. Do certain lending protocols, does Frax Lend have some gauges within, so it's hard to say. Sam hasn't been very specific about it, but again, we're going into this whole thing where locked FXS, okay, is being used as the main incentive to incentivize block space usage. And again, that locked veFXS, if it gets locked into Convex is becoming the container for all of this so that it never goes back on the market. So once it's locked into Convex, and I assume that the initial airdrop or points or however this is being calculated will be in a form of you'll develop a certain amount of points, whatever that is, because you're staking or you're locked. And then with those points, you'll earn a certain amount of veFXS. Then you'll be able to claim that as CVXFXS and automatically lock into Convex. Well, what does that do? That now it's locked in Convex and it's off of the supply. That supply is off the market. And now instead of 100 million FXS, you're constantly slowly dwindling that supply down. And so, I think that this incentive structure to get people to join the chain and use the chain is also the same incentive structure that is going to get people to lock perpetually, similar to what they did with Prisma. I mean, this has elements of what they've learned with the Prisma drop and lock drop and all that stuff that I've been kind of talking about for the last couple of months. They've incorporated that into the chain. And so I think that's pretty innovative.
Yeah. Speaking of veFXS, we've actually seen an uptick in the past 3 months of more FXS starting to be relocked again. This had been on a downward trend for almost 2 years from the top when we had a total of 44.74 million FXS locked as veFXS back in March 2022. That declined all the way down to 36 million FXS that was locked in veFXS. Mm-hmm. And now we've gone back up to 38. So as the airdrop comes closer and we find out more about how the point system works and FXTL points and just everything else that's going to happen on Fraxchain, I think that number's hopefully going to go back up and eventually surpass and eclipse that all-time high that we had for total amount of FXS locked in veFXS.
I agree. Do you guys want to take any stabs at like how much TVL you think we're going to attract in the first 3 months?
Definitely 9 figures. I know that, the launch, they will initially be on the softer side, make sure, everything's working,
sure.
Everything's clean. But I think, once people get smart about the Blockspace incentives and how mm-hmm. powerful that actually is, you're going to see, a massive uptick in projects that come on chain, whether they be like meme coins, whether they be DeFi protocols, whether they be NFT mints. You got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Speaking of launches, I have a running thread that has all the launches. We'll include that in whatever the show notes are here. If it's on Twitter, we'll include a link to that. And you can go and track that. Right now, we have 3 projects that have been announced. We have Curve. We also have Raw, which is by the Ramses team, and they're going to be deploying a DEX on Fraxtal. And then we also have the first meme coin, which is real world abs.
Yeah.
Real world abs. Real world abs.
Very fitting for the Fraxtal community.
Which has great branding, and I would suggest you check it out.
Yeah, I think we're gonna hit 1 billion in 3 months.
Billion.
TVL.
Yeah,
let's go.
I think we're gonna do it. I just think that the incentives will cause that to happen. It's totally different than like the ARB dip, and the optimism drop. It's a perpetual incentivization structure, and that's going to cause massive TVL. I mean, what did Blast do when they first started? Did they get like 600 million? Or
they have like 1.1 billion now.
Yeah, like 1.1 billion. Like, it's not even on the same level here. So
it's not even functioning yet. People are just airdrop farming there.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe it's even bigger. Dare I say bigger than 1 billion? But I'm going to be conservative and just say 1 billion. But I can certainly see maybe by the end of 2024, 5 billion. It's possible.
That would be great.
We'll see.
Okay, so number 9 is that all Frax existing products are going to be deployed on Fraxtal. So FraxLend, FraxSwap,
BAMM,
all the other assets.
BAMM.
Well, that BAMM was number 10, right? So number 10 is that BAMM will be the first marquee product that's going to be launched on Fraxtal.
Yeah, that's huge too.
Yeah.
Because BAMM is the product that I think is what's going to eliminate the whole collateralization ratio issue. If that's done properly and there's a lot of locked liquidity going into BAMM, then say goodbye to CR. That's not going to be even an issue anymore. We're going to zoom past 100%, and that's it. Then all the fees start turning on for locked FXS holders.
So not only are you getting points, but you're getting all the fees as well.
Exactly. Like, I think now you start to see how this whole thing comes together, why the chain is important, why FrxETH is a 2-token system, why, they did all of these different things, why BAMM, so that they can solve the collateral ratio. They could also solve for having extra funds available, like a credit facility for Frax down the road if it ever needs to borrow liquidity for any DPEG events. I mean, you can kind of see now the bigger picture of why they have all these different products built together to make something much, much more powerful.
Yeah. And also, I mean, if FXS goes to 20, I mean, the CR is pretty much closed at that point.
Eliminated.
Yeah. We don't have to worry about it anymore. So those are the two things. BAMM was the last one, rounding out number 10. I'm really excited for that one. I think everybody else is.
I think you're going to see a lot of the coins that, like Dave was saying, like, you're going to see meme coins. You're going to see all kinds of projects that, can launch on there permissionlessly and I mean, just be able to launch on there and borrow against the asset with no liquidation or zero liquidation risk. I mean, it's going to
This is a 0 to 1 moment for permissionless lending.
Just a little bit of alpha, I'm talking to the Trident guys and I'm trying to get them to deploy on Fraxtal. So, they're actively, talking to Paxos to see if they can go ahead and do that.
Yeah. It's like, what are the other, this is Fraxtal. What are the other stable coins that are going to be on there?
That's what,
And I'm not just talking about bridged assets. I'm talking about like native issued stable coins.
I could see a world where, PYUSD is native on that chain. I mean, Frax is very positive sum. So I could see Athena down the road. For sure. I could see Athena doing it. I think there's a connection there with base. So I think, some kind of back and forth with USDC is probably likely. I don't know. The other ones are a little harder to predict, but definitely. I know FXUSD, when it comes out from Protocol FX, will probably, launch on Fraxtal too. So, huge world.
If we break 1 billion in TVL going into the next few months, we'll actually be number 4 in terms of TVL by L2. So Arbitrum's sitting at number 1 with a total of $11 billion of TVL. Optimism is at number 2 with $5.6 billion of TVL. Manta at number 3 with $1.76 billion of TVL. And then Base at number 4 was $743 million of TVL. So, if we're at $1 billion sometime in Q2, Q3, we'll be the 4th largest L2.
Yeah, my thing, just like what Charlie Munger said, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. I just think that, Sam knows what he's doing when it comes to the incentivization structure. And I think that's going to allow TVL to grow way beyond these other chains.
The future is Fraxtal.
The future is Fraxtal for sure. 100%.
Well, very, very cool. That brings us to the end of this episode. I hope you guys learned a lot about 10 things that we know about Fraxchain, aka Fraxtal, so far. Make sure to like and subscribe. Send this to all your friends who are just eager to find out more information about Fraxtal and its upcoming launch. We're just probably like 8 days away, if the 7 is to be right.
Yep. Lock your FXS.
Or maybe it's tomorrow. Who knows?
Get your FXS.
I have no idea. Maybe just check the chain.
Yeah. Stake your CVX FXS and lock your FXS because snapshots are coming.
Yeah. And, if you look at all the other associated tokens in the Frax ecosystem, Convex definitely going to benefit from this as well too, and Curve, and also potentially FFX protocol, Prisma, everybody that's tied in with Frax. It's all boats are lifted by rising tides.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. 100%.
Well, thanks so much for tuning in today. I'm Sam, and Dave, where are you at on Twitter, and where can we find you?
DeFi Dave 22.
Mm-hmm. Cryptovestor?
Cryptovestor 77.
And I'm at traders_insight. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to actually, if you know what, you can come to the Flywheel website, flywheeldefi.com, and sign up for our email that we send out every single day, where we aggregate all the latest Frax info straight to your inbox. It's got the best and latest information about Frax in an easy to read format. So come and sign up. All right. Thanks, everybody. And we will see you next time.
All right.
Take care. Thanks, everyone.